Hey, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Hymns March edition. I'm here with Pastor T. Wes Moore, one of my best buddies.
Hey, man.
We're from way back in seminary days.
It wasn't that long ago, but yet it was.
Way back. Way back.
I mean, it was only like 12 years ago.
I never have a camera from this side because then you see a giant bald spot on the back of my head. Let's just say that.
Well, I can't say what I was going to say. So
where are you?
Anyway.
where are you zooming in from, Pastor?
Right now, I am in Greenville, North Carolina, home of Eastern Carolina University, ECU. I've been out in Eastern North Carolina since 2019. Was my first call was right outside New Bern in Pollocksville. Now I am an interim minister, interim head of staff at West End Presbyterian Church, right outside Pinehurst. Which, if there are any golf fans out there, that is a big golfing resort area.
The U.S. Open's been there multiple times.
Yeah, and they're preparing. They're expanding the highway, for the next. I think it's PGA. I'm not a sports person. I don't know.
You don't follow the sports ball?
I don't follow the sports ball. I had to show up to marching band, for football games, and yeah. But so that's all I know.
That there's a halftime.
Yes, there was a halftime that I had to be at and be in the stands. So I travel, and I love interim ministry. It's a specialized form of ministry, and tell me if I'm going too deep into another way, but
tell me about
it. West End is about 150 miles from Greenville, so I travel twice a week, spend the night at the church's. Has an old parsonage that they converted into Christian Ed space. Well, then in order for me to work there, I got to have a place to crash. So I've got my own bachelor pad half the week. And so Lauren, my wife, who's a hospice chaplain, clergy couple, she works in Greenville. I go back and forth, and it's really good for us. We're two independent people, and we love each other, but we also have our own thing that we do. And we have our two dogs, Melody and Murphy, and they are anxious little critters, but they're asleep right now. So
they need God's grace.
They do, especially Melody. Both of them. Melody, she'll be 4 in May, and she was dumped with 30. She was one of 30 hounds dumped at the pound after hunting season was done, and there's no mean bone in her body, but she is scared of a lot of things. She's come a long way. I've only heard her bark 7 times.
Oh, wow.
And we've had her for almost 3 years. So
wow. Well, hey, let's talk about this opening hymn you chose. So what I asked Pastor T. Wes to do was I said, hey, just choose some hymns that you love or that you want to drink some coffee to and talk about or just hang out. And this was the first one that he suggested. And I thought it was a great opening hymn. Now, I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Now, what I learned was that the tune is named Moody because the writer of the tune was associated very strongly with the Moody Bible Institute. And the text writer was the daughter of a Presbyterian minister.
Yeah, she was. Julia H. Johnston was.
Is that why you chose it? Because of the Presbyterian connection, or just because you love the hymn?
Yeah, well, all the above, right? I loved the hymn first, then I found out Julia H. Johnston. Well, okay, and I'll just. This is how important we have to read who wrote these texts, right?
Yeah.
Grew up singing this, thinking, okay, it was all men, right? Okay, so great hymn. Oh yeah, Julia. Okay, that probably could be female, I guess. But then as I got, it wasn't until 10 years ago, maybe a little less than that. And this was one of the hymns that we sang on my final Sunday at Broadmoor United Methodist Church in Shreveport. And that's when I thought, oh yeah, she's Presbyterian. So there's a lot of different layers to this, right? And also being Women's History Month too. So and I want to. So all these hymn writers, or the third one being a translator. The translator is a woman. The hymn writer's German, a male, but
you're talking about the next one.
Yeah, the third. Well,
the third hymn that we're going to listen to today.
Well, she's also she's also a translator, but I'm talking about the final hymn.
Gotcha.
Yes. So anyway, there's a lot, but all these three women have been involved with education.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Julia H. Johnston, being born just 10 years or so before the Civil War,
mm-hmm.
and then died on the eve of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. So she couldn't vote her entire life.
Right.
She, like her colleague Fannie J. Crosby, they were involved in the suffrage movement in different ways, right? And when women were told to spread the good news, but to shut up about it, well, that's the mixed signals, and we've all gotten those on dates, and it's just it's not fun. And so hearing her story.
Mm-hmm.
And I sing this, and what we need to be doing with especially hymns, congregational songs, like in our hearts, right? But you sing it every time, like you're reading scripture in a new way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love, and it's commentary on Romans 5, especially Romans 5:20, where sin increased, or sin was present, grace was increased all the more.
Mm-hmm.
And that Romans 5 is that pivot from okay, we're broken creatures. We are sinful creatures. And in my Reformed context as a Presbyterian, the original sin is hereditary. Okay. And I know that not everybody's we're all gonna be on the same page, and that's fine. But I'm telling you where I'm coming from.
You want to go? You want to go? You want to go?
So because I'm like, if you don't believe that sin is hereditary, have you ever told a child no, and then they did it anyway, and they looked at you? They know what they're doing. Or unfortunately, as we're seeing in our cultural climate right now, our political climate, and I preached on Romans 5 a couple weeks ago. It's the first Sunday in Lent, and talking about, unfortunately, we're seeing this across the country, but in Moore County, you may have heard about it in December, the electric grid, Moore County, North Carolina, was sabotaged.
That's right. That made national news.
Because some fool was offended because of a drag show. And then on the eve of Hanukkah, okay, the night before, the day before Hanukkah started, some Nazis put up a banner of the swastika, and the Board of Commissioners took them 2 months. It wasn't until 2 weeks ago for them to finally say, "Hey, that's not cool." Anyway, I'm going down a tangent, I know, but I said, I cannot stand these people, but yet I'm supposed to love them, but we're supposed to hold them accountable, right? We are to confront the powers of evil. But with this hymn, I use it as an illustration of my sermon because it's not in the Presbyterian hymnal. Hint, hint, if we have a supplement coming out, or whenever a new hymnal comes out, I'm going to lobby for this hymn because it needs to be in there. All 4 stanzas. Because let me tell you this. So back in 2016, I did the United Methodist History of Hymns for the month. I think it was the month of May or June, and I did. This was the first one I did, and talking about the stanza, sin and despair like the sea waves cold threatens the soul with infinite loss. Grace that is greater, yes, grace untold, points to the refuge, the mighty cross. And my dad, this was also one of my dad's favorite hymns, and he called, and we typically used to talk on Sundays, and he said, so I didn't realize, I looked for that stanza, it's not in the Baptist hymnal. I said, and he was surprised. Okay, he was like, how dare the liberals have something that we don't, that's actually really good, And so at his service back almost a year and a half ago, I was trying to figure out which, and his only one that he had requested was Immortal, Invisible, God Only.
Oh yeah.
We also did Wonderful Grace of Jesus. That was the Moore family hymn, but this one we did. But I said, and I found a notepad he had. It had his initials on it, and a little thing you carry in your pocket, and it had that stanza in there. I said, I know which hymn we're doing. as the second hymn. And so nice. I made sure, I told the congregation of the Baptist Church, I said, y'all, this is not in the hymnal, so we're going to have to use the screen for this one thing. And so just let go and let T. West, I'll direct you when you need to.
That's funny, because the page scan that I pulled up from Hymnary was, I guess, from a hymnal that left that darn stanza out.
Yeah, and that looked like the one of the Baptist hymnals.
Yeah, I think so.
And what but that is important, right? That is and so I love that hymn, and that will be that will and let me tell you this. So I was saying like a stanza or two from it in the sermon, and then I did the refrain. Well, on the benediction, charge and benediction, I just went into it. I just went into the refrain, and other people, because we have a lot of churches have that hodgepodge, right? We have a lot of former Baptists and Methodists in that congregation.
For sure.
They knew it. And so people were singing with me. I mean, I didn't have the words printed. So I mean, it was just really great.
I wanted to point out a performance practice for that hymn. The refrain is actually quite stagnant, because it's in 3/4 time. And so it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and it's just dotted halves. Grace. So what drives it a lot of times is that piano accompaniment, right? That you heard the piano, grace, grace, filling in those gaps. I always, a lot of times that's not written in the hymnal. If you're playing from the hymnal, you'll just see the dotted halves, but that's such an important part of that gospel style, right? And that's what kind of brings it alive. It's also beautiful text painting, because as we stay stagnant, God's still working, right? So even when we're full of sin, even when we're not doing what we're supposed to do, there's something moving, right? The Spirit continues to press us forward, and so it's like this conversation between
the pianist must have a heavy left hand. Okay. And in some hymnals it has the practice too, that I think it's the bass, tenors, and altos. Marvelous grace.
That's right. They'll put that in there. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So there's some of that, but
all right, we got to move on to Gracia.
No, sorry. Yes.
the next, no, that's okay. The next song that you chose was by a living hymn writer, Gracia Grindle. Tell me why you chose this one while I get it pulled up.
So that was I love that one. Again, that's in the Sing the Faith, or if you're United Methodist, The Faith We Sing. That's the first one in there, number 2001. And I don't know when I first sang it, but I know when I first paid attention to it, and that was in 2016. And I was doing a Women as Preachers, Prophets, and Priests class when I was at Union Presbyterian Seminary in Richmond. My first year there. And so my final project was on women hymn writers and the suffrage movement. And but I was interested, still am, right? But so Gracia, excuse me, I want to say Gracia or Gracia Grindle. Pardon me, I'm sorry. But
she doesn't watch Coffee and Hymns, I don't think.
I just want to make sure. I'll always stumble on names. I'm not, so what I love the Old Testament. I preach more on the Old Testament than I do the New Testament. Okay. Because part of it is people are, man, there's so much bad stuff in the Old Testament. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, first of all, I go back all the way to the creation. Yeah. God was mad at Adam and Eve and threw them out, but God also made clothes for them to wear. Okay. So even in the anger, God was like, and of course some animals, it was made of animal skin. So, you fill in the blanks there, but throughout history, and God gave, and then ultimately Jesus is the fulfiller of the law and the prophets, not abolisher. We still pay attention to the law. We still study it. But so what I love, this is so rich in biblical imagery. And I think that's what she a lot of her stuff, either adaptations of text or
she's got full lectionary cycle collections.
Love that. And so this one, course of premise being Psalm 96, sing to the Lord a new song and recount of God's marvelous work. So not only sing a new song, but also remember what God has done. And so a lot of this imagery comes from Deuteronomy 32 and 33, and that's Moses's last.
The Song of Moses.
To them. He's singing to them, right?
His singing benediction.
His singing benediction, and he's telling them, "Hey, we've been together for 40 years, and in that sense that we wandered far from home. Of course, this is putting us in it, but because they got to the promised land and they got scared."
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they had to wander around for 40 years. They were so close to home. Oh, okay. And how we do that. We're so, God, human beings we just don't get it. And I tell people, look, when you're reading, especially the Hebrew scriptures, you're reading that, it is a mirror, because we do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Don't think that we do the same thing. And so I love Deuteronomy, and that she uses, and then also you bear us through the world, an eagle to her young. Again, a little Psalm 91 in there, right? And kind of eagle's wings, and I can't remember the other scripture that quotes or that alludes to, but this is, and so actually. So we'll be singing this Sunday, because I'm preaching on Moses striking the rock in the desert, Exodus 17, and that comes up every Lent, and I think even one other time during the church year, depends on the year cycle. But
so let's hear from Gracia then.
Yeah, sure.
Gracia, God, see, I did it right. I just did it. Right
I know. Gracia.
Softbound hymnal, we sing to you, O God.
Darwall, such a sturdy tune.
I know.
I forgot how much I like that tune. I grew up singing it all the time. I grew up Presbyterian, organ and choir kind of style liturgies, and we sang that tune all the time. And I was just thinking, like, if you're a tune writer and you want to learn the craft of like classic hymn, strophic hymn type tunes. Study Darwall. There's nothing particularly fancy about it, right? But it's just like perfect. Like the bass line does exactly what it needs to do. It's fun to sing because it goes exactly where your ear wants it to.
Yeah,
and it's interesting in that it's not always the root, and it does a couple things. It's so singable. Yeah. And then that was a nice. That was from the Faith We Sing, and that descant was really. They didn't sing it, but I sang it to myself. It was really, really nice descant. Yeah. So I commend that to tune writers. If you're looking for that. And Gracia is she just takes text places that are so biblical and just puts them in a way that's super
There's singable. Always something more to find, to discover in that one text and in all her text. Yeah, always.
Well, we're almost to the end of our time. Here at Coffee and Hymns, we try to keep it between 20 and 30 minutes. And, because people got work to do. I assume, you're a pastor, so you got plenty of time on your hands.
Oh, yeah. I only work 1.5 hours a week.
Right. Exactly.
Actually, as an interim, I only work 45 minutes a week.
That's right. What are they going to do? Fire you? No, let's talk about that for just a second. Sure. One of the things that I've appreciated about you and your ministry, you started off in the music ministry, doing a master's in sacred music where we met, but then you went back to seminary to do an MDiv, and really through that call process, really discerned that you're called to interim ministry, which a lot of people consider that like something that retired people do if they want to keep working or things like that, but I've really appreciated your willingness to go where God's calling you into that particular ministry. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the interim.
Yeah. I think part of it, I had some opportunities after I graduated Union Seminary in Richmond before my first call, and I was a state supply, and at the same time I was an interim music minister. So I was doing this interim work. And I made some connections, even though I knew my time was going to be less than a year. It is specialized ministry. We need good interims out there because I'm not going for longevity in that congregation. My hope is that congregation can to ponder anew what the Almighty can do. Because it sounds cliche. We're in a transitional moment. Well, yeah, but it's to get them in the right direction. Hopefully, not my own power, the Spirit's power. And Paul planted, Apollos watered. T. West probably took out the garbage or put on the manure. Okay, we all have our different roles, right? And I can be myself, and I have to be myself. And I love saying I'm not going to be here for long. I mean, I'm going basically now 3 months at a time. And so I also love the Gospel of Mark, that Mark and urgency. All right, got this. I'm not going to accomplish everything, but I love it, and we need it. We need good interims out there in order to set up the churches and the next ministers. Hopefully, a long, healthy tenure.
Right.
Healthy.
Well, thank you for what you do. We'll catch up again soon. I want to hear more about what you're doing. But we're going to end the hymn that you chose to end with is Praise to the Lord the Almighty. I mean, you're making my Presbyterian heart sing.
These are all Reformed writers. These are all Reformed writers. Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, the translation of this one is the Catherine Winkworth. One of the great, if not the greatest hymn translator of our.
That's right.
Available to us. Just amazing work that she did to make so many different hymns accessible to us in the English language.
And let me say this, the Ponder Anew, that third stanza was left out of the Presbyterian hymnal. And especially as in our ordination vows, will you serve the church with with intelligence, energy, intelligence, imagination, and love. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, who with his love doth befriend me. The some hymnals have if. Everything else is will, shall, but the if, no, who with his love or as with his love does befriend me. So anyway, that's my last 2 cents on that.
Well, thanks for being with us for Coffee and Hymns.
Yes,
we'll listen to this final hymn.
Had my 5 cups of coffee.
Well, whatever you're drinking, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed meeting Pastor T. West in North Carolina.
Thank you,
this
Brian.
is Praise to the Lord, the Almighty. Oh, this is the Mac Wilberg arrangement, the orchestra.